Well, hello everyone. It's been a very long time. Actually, it's only been 2 weeks, but either way, I am Raphael Garcia. Thank you for joining me. We're back for the MMA Ratings Podcast. This is episode 97. We're creeping up on episode 100, and we are working together to put something pretty special together for you guys. I am just the one that has been dragging my feet, as I usually do with just about everything else. But hopefully, we will have something special for you all in the next couple of weeks. But anyway, thank you for joining me today. Thank you for taking some time out of your busy Thursday evening, doing whatever it is that you're doing, to listen to the commentary that I will have about the world of mixed martial arts. I can barely talk today. Schwan, my partner in crime, should be joining me later on. I hit him up earlier today, so hopefully he hops into the show later. But either way, thank you for your time. Thank you for listening to our content. Please like and share what we're talking about here today. You can click the subscribe button if you're listening to us on YouTube and share this across your social media channels. I appreciate you doing so. I'm also going to tweet out the live link right now. So, yeah, we have quite a bit to talk about because we had UFC 228 on Saturday, which was a show that was much better than I think a lot of people anticipated from start to finish. I really enjoyed it. Where we got to see Tyron Woodley retain his welterweight title when he stopped Darren Till in the second round of their main event. Jessica Andrade looked great. There's just a lot to talk about from that show from start to finish because it was really exciting. It was much more than what I and probably anyone else thought it was going to be. So we're going to talk about that, talk about some news from the week, and just let you guys know what we're working on in the world of sports because that's what we do here. Not only do we talk about MMA, but we talk about boxing. I talk about professional wrestling sometimes, grappling. A lot of my grappling coverage will be coming over from Bloody Elbow into maybe MMA ratings, maybe some fan sided content that I do as well. So you'll be able to catch more of my stuff there. Schwan, you can always find him writing for ratings, writing for a couple other sites as well. The man is probably one of the top analysts, in my opinion, in the game. He really knows his women's MMA. So don't ever sleep on this guy when we're talking about the women's game because we do cover that a lot here. But let's go ahead and jump into our agenda because we have the first news item I want to cover today. I had three on the agenda, but there's really a fourth that I want to cover as well. But first thing we have is the press event that's been announced for the Conor McGregor Khabib Nurmagomedov fight. That is a mere 20 some odd days away. They are doing a press conference, a closed press conference that's only open to media in New York next week in Radio City Music Hall with both Khabib and Conor will be on site. They will be on site talking and probably answering questions from the media. It should be a pretty interesting event to see what goes on. I know a lot of people are talking about why is it closed to the public? Why aren't they opening it up to fans? And I think that that is a good starting point. That's a good conversation to have there. Me personally, I look at this and I think some guys on the MMA beat today were talking about it from a safety precaution, and I could kind of see that. We've seen multiple incidents occur with Conor McGregor. First, there was the bottle throwing incident with Nate Diaz. Then there was the dolly throwing incident. He's gotten into altercations with people backstage. He's gotten into that altercation at the club, at the bar. I think he was in Ireland. I remember that situation. So I think closing this off to the public is a good move. It's I think it will help keep people out who are coming there with the negative intent to get rowdy, to be out of control. Whether we want to believe it or not, MMA is a sport that doesn't attract the greatest of fans sometimes, and I would not be surprised if they find themselves in a situation where fans are getting pretty rowdy. Nobody's really talking about it, but I think back to a comment that Khabib Nurmagomedov made way before the start of way before the start of this whole fight promotion. I remember, I think it was after Khabib beat Michael Johnson, and he was in the cage being asked questions. I think he said something along the lines of, "There's 10,000 Irish and 50,000 people from his country, so if they want a war, bring it." Um, that right there, that type of narrative, is something that I don't think the UFC wants to incite. I don't think they want to put themselves in a position where these groups do come out to a major media outlet and there is a problem. While the UFC can control what goes on the stage, they can control that type of aspect and kind of manufacture what goes on there. They can't really control what goes on in the background, in the stands. I think I can't remember the third host on the MMA Beat today, but they were talking about how a lot of individuals are there already drunk, already being rowdy. I don't think the UFC wants to take a chance and incite a situation that could easily get out of control if some of these people come with the intent of starting a problem. So, with that in mind, I think this is the right move. I think this is the right move to keep this event closed to the public just for certain people to be involved. And I'm interested in the questions that will be asked. I'm interested in who will be there. One also important note about this, I think Luke Thomas tweeted this out because it was in the press release. The UFC 230, which is scheduled after this event, does not have a current main event right now. It has a lot of other fights already booked, but it does not have a current main event. The UFC elected to change the date that tickets go on sale. They're going to go on sale right after this press release, or excuse me, right after this press conference, which he pointed out lets him know that perhaps they're going to announce the main event at that point in time. And it may not necessarily only be one. Can you remember this event is scheduled for November 3rd. It's going to occur in Madison Square Garden. Right now, there's only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's only 6 fights booked for this card, and it's some very good fights. I mean, you got Lyman Good coming back to the UFC, Derek Brunson versus Israel Adesanya, Jacare against David Branch, Chris Weidman versus Luke Rockhold. We're getting that rematch. Yoel Romero versus Borrachinha, Paulo Costa. And we also, right now, this slated main event, but I doubt this is going to remain in that position, is the Dustin Poirier-Nate Diaz fight. I wish that fight got moved and became a main event somewhere else, because I think those two guys can definitely go for 5 rounds, but I'm interested in seeing what they put above that. They do have Valentina Shevchenko, who is coming off of the situation where she was unfortunately out of a fight against Nico Montano because of Montano's weight cut issues, which led to Montano being stripped of the title. So Shevchenko is still listed as a #1 contender for that belt, and the UFC is looking to find someone to replace her and challenge, or not necessarily challenge, that may be the wrong word, but face Shevchenko for the belt. So that is a situation to watch. I don't think that will be the main event. There's also talks about maybe seeing if Tyron Woodley can defend against Colby Covington on that card as well. That could be a big main event as well if paired with the right co-main event. I think that could be a pretty big show. Colby Covington has been talking to various outlets. He talked on Luke Thomas's Sirius show this week, and he also talked to Sean Ross Sapp on what is it? Goodness, what's Sean Ross? Fightful Sports. He talked about that as well there too. as whether or not that can be a fight that is inserted, because he was pushing to fight in November before he was pulled out of last Saturday's fight against. He was the original opponent instead of Darren Till. So there's that situation. But we'll see what kind of comes out of there. But we are. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to agree with Luke on that and think that maybe that a main event and a big co-main event will be announced for this UFC 230 card, because they do need something big whenever they go to Madison Square Garden. I mean, that's quote unquote the mecca of sports, even though a major championship hasn't been won there by any of the big four or by the Knicks, period. Nothing's been won there by the Knicks in a very long time, but it's considered the mecca. And this is me doing in air quotes the mecca of sports, but that's neither here nor there. But either way, this will be an intriguing press conference to watch. So definitely be sure to stay close and stay tight to your favorite MMA media outlets to see what goes on there. Second news item. This is kind of interesting to me, and I'm going to pair it with the fourth item I mentioned earlier. But Combat Americas, which is a MMA promotion that's more targeted towards the Hispanic demographic, they're moving their English content over to DAZN, wherever, however you say it, but they're moving their content over to that streaming platform. This is the same streaming platform that houses Bellator's content, but they're moving their content over there, and that is it's an intriguing development, because that is a MMA promotion that I'm interested in, because I believe they're looking to tap into this Hispanic market in the right way. They have a roster that features some very strong Hispanic prospects and competitors. Like they have Amanda Serrano, who I think is a very intriguing women's. I think she's fighting at flyweight right now. She's a very intriguing former boxer who's making her way into the MMA space. So I think she's a name to watch. This first event will stream this Friday, and it features Levi Mariquin against Jose Alidi for the inaugural bantamweight title. I may have said one or both of those names wrong, but that is an interesting fight there. I still have not seen how much this platform costs in any way, shape, or form, but it may become a space where you can begin catching MMA and other combat sports content that's not necessarily targeted toward the North American market space. 13 Combat Americas events are going to be on this platform per year, plus the Bellator events. We know that they will be streaming their events there live. They also will be streaming their foreign events that usually get leaked and streamed in a delayed sense for the North American fan base. We will probably be seeing more, where we will be seeing their content on that platform as well too. So it's definitely something worth keeping an eye on. And this kind of ties into that extra news story I wanted to talk about, because that is around one, what's his name? That is around Joe Rogan. I'm sorry, I just had a complete brain fart. But on the Joe Rogan Experience this week, he was talking specifically about Bellator as a number 2 competitor to the UFC. I wrote about this for MMA ratings this week, as well as how Bellator, if the idea of Bellator being a number 2 competitor to UFC is a good idea, or is something that everyone should begin to hope for. The reason being is because competition always breeds better product. I mean, think about it. In its basic sense, competition is what brings the men and women into the octagon to see who's the best competitor that night in that fight. So these individuals are working hard to be the best that they can be to win, and everything from an opening card fight all the way up to a title. That is based around competition, but also in the business world, competition is a positive thing as well. I talked about the Monday Night Wars from years ago between pro wrestling promotions, the WWE and the WCW, where both organizations were working tirelessly to one up each other. WWE went from being the platform that owned the Monday night space for years, and then finding themselves in a position where they were losing out to WCW because they were putting together better content on a weekly basis and putting together content that featured the names that people wanted to see. I mean, there was a point in time where I think WWE lost the ratings war for like a year and a half to WCW before, and then the situation occurred where Mick Foley, Mankind, won the WWE Championship, and Tony Schiavone made I guess at the time, what was considered a funny quip in leaking that news bit during the WCW show, which was aired live earlier than the taped Raw show, but they found that a lot of people switched over from the live show to see Mankind win the title, and then from there on out, it was just a downward spiral for WCW. But what was important during that time is that WWF was such a I think it was WWF back then, but WWE now was such a powerhouse in the professional wrestling space that they weren't being pushed to be different and to uh, do better by their viewers. Kind of like the UFC is today, where they have such a lead on the rest of the community, such a big grasp, such a big space out in front of someone else that you have to wonder sometimes, are they putting together the best cards that fans could watch? Usually the answer is no, that there's so much MMA out there that fans are slowly showing a disinterest. UFC 228, excellent card, excellent prelims, but here it is, the prelims had a ridiculously low rating just because there wasn't an interest in the show. There wasn't an interest in the people fighting. You can blame that on the promotion of the event and the fact that Tyron Woodley hasn't been promoted correctly. You can blame it on that, but that's only a small fraction of the piece. I think more of it has to deal with the way that UFC isn't putting the greatest content out there. And what Joe Rogan was talking about was how Bellator coming into the space as a viable number two to the UFC not only creates a stronger competitive space for the viewer by forcing the promotion to put together better content, it also becomes a better space for the fighters because they have more opportunity to use their leverage as a star power to see which opportunity is best for them and best for their pockets. Uriah Faber has been talking about Sage Northcutt, who is now a free agent within the UFC. Sage Northcutt is riding what I think is a 3-fight win streak. Sage Northcutt is not ranked. He doesn't deserve to be ranked at this point in time, but he is a fighter that the UFC has promoted, who they're firmly behind, who has that look and that nature that they want to cultivate into a homegrown star. He has the athletic abilities, he's developing the talent, and all of that's coming to fruition, but he's now a free agent. He's joked about, or I'm going to say joked, because I think it should be considered a little bit more serious than we want to consider it. But him and what's the guy's name? Logan Paul have been going back and forth on Twitter about a potential fight, and this is the same Logan Paul who just did a fight against KSI on YouTube that's generated, I think estimates got it to be about 1.8, almost $2 million. Now, while we don't know what the profit shares for that event was, that's still a strong haul for an amateur combat event. Imagine a fight between him and Super Sage Northcutt with the proper promotion behind it. Don't you dare try to tell me that it wouldn't garner attention in a way that would put money into everybody's pockets, which why you agree with it or not. That's always the goal, because these guys are prize fighters. Prize fighters first. They're out there trying to make the most amount of money that they possibly can to fill their coffers. So that is why this deal between Combat Americas and DAZN is important. That is why the deal between Bellator and DAZN is important. That's why it's important to pay attention to these business developments, because we don't know how this is going to change the game. We don't know how free agency is going to continue changing the game. I mean, we see more and more guys looking at, and women looking at, hey, is Bellator a viable opportunity? Is ONE FC, is Rising, are these organizations viable opportunities for me to make the most amount of money in my career? Hell, we just saw Michael Chandler, a consummate competitor, prize fighter, and athlete, multiple time Bellator champion, elect to re-sign with Bellator rather than shoot his shot in the UFC, probably because where he is in his career right now. Looking at his age, he has a newly adopted son, and he's going to make more money with Bellator than he would with the UFC. He's also probably going to be fighting longer. Fighting, I hate to say it this way, but fighting lesser talent and being the featured guy. I mean, hell, if he jumped into the UFC right now, I question if he would be ranked in the top 10. I know he wouldn't be ranked in the top 5. I know he would be well outside of a title shot. While I would love to see him fight the likes of a Nate Diaz, a Eddie Alvarez. Again, I mean, they have that fight. Eddie Alvarez is also a free agent now too, so that fight would be a given. Fight maybe a Tony Ferguson, fight a Khabib Nurmagomedov. I mean, that would be a great fight. Fighting maybe against a Justin Gaethje. All those fights are very intriguing to me, but he, in my opinion, he made the right decision to stay with Bellator. And if you want to hear my full thoughts about that, you can check out our previous show before I went on work on the work trip to Boston, where Schwan and I dived into that more in depth. But definitely pay close attention to that business deal between DAZN and Combat Americas, and let's see what they continue doing in the combat space going forward. We've seen that the UFC Fight Pass has not developed into the platform that everyone thought it was going to be. It has not hit the stride of the WWE network yet, so it'll be interesting to see if DAZN kind of continues pushing in that space from a competitive nature. The final, I guess, fourth now media news item I wanted to hit upon was the announcement that BJ Penn will be fighting Ryan Hall at lightweight. I don't know I think this is in December that this fight is supposed to occur, but Ryan Hall is finally returning to the UFC. He has not fought since defeating Gray Maynard in what was probably one of my favorite fights of, I think it was 2017. It might be longer than that. Let me look. When was Ryan Hall's last fight? Ryan Hall last fought in 2016, December of 2016, so it's almost been 2 years. By the time this fight comes around at UFC 232, it will be 2 years since he stepped into the UFC, and there's kind of conflicting stories about not fought since then. Some individuals will tell you that the UFC has offered him multiple fights that he's continued to turn down. In many ways, I think also what plays a part into it is that his style is not what the UFC wants to promote. He's grappling first, pull guard, make you grapple, make you compete with me on the mat, and try to submit you. I don't think that that's a style that the UFC wants to get behind. It's definitely not a style that the mainstream fans want to get behind, but it's still fighting. It's a throwback to what occurred back in the past. And looking at UFC 232, this is their end of the year show, usually one of their bigger events, and it features Cyborg defending her title against a bantamweight champion and Amanda Nunes. So we'll see as this card continues to flesh out. BJ Penn, the first American to win an IBJJF world title. It'll be interesting to see what he does in this fight. Sorry, Schwan says he wants to join, so let me re-add him. It's actually good timing because we are about to segue into some recapping from the weekend where we had UFC 228, which, as I said at the opening of the show, I think was a very good event. And I haven't seen anything about sorry about that, guys. Um, Schwan should be joining us soon, but it'll be interesting to see what the pay per view numbers were for UFC 228 because while it was an enjoyable card from start to finish, it may not have had the star power to get everyone viewing. But here he is, the man with the plan, the man with your analysis that you want to hear. Schwan, how you doing there, sir?
I'm doing good. Yourself?
I cannot hear you.
Hello?
Let me
Hello?
check something real quick.
Hello? 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 Hello?
Let me see. Give me a second, Schwan.
Hello?
One
Yeah.
second. One second.
Oh.
Schwan, can you hear me now?
Hello? Can you got me? Hello?
Yep. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I got you.
Okay, cool. Sorry about that. So let's go ahead and go from there, man. You just came in right at the perfect timing where we're talking about UFC 228. Let's start from the top, my man. Well, actually, before we even go into a fight by fight breakdown, what did you think of this entire event?
I thought they got the best out of the event they could have. It had a lot of finishes. The fights were pretty exciting. It didn't really drag on. I don't think there were a lot of high hopes for the event as far as like pay-per-view buys or you know expectations for dynamic finishes, but they got a lot of them, and that's what they kind of needed. I mean, that's definitely Tyrone Woodley's reputation benefited from him getting a, a dynamic stoppage. So I think the event was much better than advertised, especially given everything that went wrong. And I think they have to be happy with whatever they get from it.
Yeah, man, I think it was I definitely enjoyed the showcase. It was good to me from start to finish. There were some great fights, and we're going to kind of dive in. And there were some great fights by some people we may not have been expecting them by. I think that's what made it that much more fun for me. But we're going to dive right into them and start at the main event where Tyron Woodley submitted Darren Till in the second round to retain his 170-pound title and insert himself into the conversation of the greatest of all time at 170 pounds. My vote is still GSP, but I could see Woodley being considered number two of all time. What did you think about Woodley's performance here and how he shut out Darren Till from start to finish?
Well, the thing about Tyron Woodley is, and I'm not the biggest Tyron Wood family fan, but I respect what he does, and I respect him immensely. Is what he does inside and outside the cage. Once again, it was a situation where he just outsmarted his opponent. If you've seen enough of his fights, you see that he doesn't show a diverse array of skills. He's not hitting flying triangles, judo throwing people. He's not even really wrestling people a whole lot. You don't see him throwing exotic combinations, lead uppercuts, spinning back kicks. You didn't really see him a lot throwing a lot of head kicks or high or leg kicks. He has like 5 to 7 moves he does, and basically what he does is the same thing that Nick Diaz and Nate Diaz does, and they get a lot of credit for it. But Tyrone Woodley never gets the credit. He makes you fight his fight. He creates an instance where you do exactly what he wants, and you eliminate all your other tools and all of your other physical skills, and engage him in exactly the manner that he wants to be engaged in. And once again, that's exactly what he did. He jumped on Till a little bit early, kind of throw Till off, to make him wary of the speed and the explosiveness, which is what everybody's afraid of. People aren't afraid of Woodley technically; they're afraid of how dynamic he is in closing the distance, how strong he is when he gets his hands on you, and how powerful he is when he hits you. So once he offset Till early. Till just basically started giving Woodley the fight he wanted what Woodley needed. Hill had a length advantage, he had a striking advantage, and he basically didn't take advantage of either one of those. He walked into the shots that Tyron Woodley wanted him to walk into. He fought at the pace Tyron Woodley wanted to fight at, and he got put in the spots that Tyron Woodley wanted to put him in to get the fight over. It was just textbook Tyron Woodley outsmarting a guy, making him fight his fight, and then making him pay for it.
So let's talk about Woodley first, and we're going to segue into what this fight does, what this loss does for Till right now. Um, for Woodley's sake, should this fight get him more respect as the champion? He's defended. He right now that Demetrius Johnson has lost his title, he is the longest reigning. He has longest reigning champion in the UFC right now. He's knocked off another quote unquote specialist who has come in to kind of stake his claim to that 170 pound belt, excuse me. And he his narrative afterward is slightly different. You know, he's not talking about give me Nick Diaz, give me GSP. He's like, man, whoever wants to get it, they can line up and they can get these hands right now.
Well,
Does this result make him appear different to mainstream MMA fans, or is something still missing there?
well, as you know, MMA fans as a whole, there's the intelligent ones such as us, the people who listen to our show. We understand there's layers to it. But the typical fan, the first thing they're going to say is Till was a hype train and he was a fraud, which instantly takes away some of the specialness of what Tyron Woodley did. In his favor, I think him not begging for the money fight is a good move. Me and you have discussed this many times. I always say, guys, if you want to become an A side or you want to develop a fan base and get some kind of control, you have to make a narrative about what you're going to do and what you're going to do next, not about who you're going to call out per se. The narrative has to be you. And the same thing with the Conor McGregor sweepstakes. Everything someone does, Conor McGregor, Conor McGregor, Nate Diaz, Conor McGregor, Nick Diaz. You're basically taking away your power because you're saying these people's name instead of saying this is what I want, this is what I'm going to do, and you're giving them the power because you're chasing them. So it seems like Tyron Woodley's caught on to that. Now he's trying to make a narrative about what he's going to do, how bad a man he is, how he can take anybody. Instead of complaining about having to fight another top ranked guy, he's saying, give me another top ranked guy. I'll do the same thing I always do, which is beat him. That's the right approach to take to this because it's going to make the people who don't like him very angry. The people who do like him can say, you know, he's earning his respect. He's calling his shot instead of saying, trying to justify why a bigger name should come down and fight him. Just fight the fight. Put yourself in a position, keep on winning, and eventually everything will work itself out on the business end and in the cage. Maybe he may not be a superstar like some of these other guys, but he can maximize what he does have by continuing to put on decisive performances, whether they're dynamic finishes or they're just technical, unless they're just really surgical performances. The main thing is to sell yourself and to be consistent in what you're doing, and that's what he's starting to. That's what he's starting to do, in my opinion.
So let's talk about that there. What would you do next with Tyron Woodley? We talked about this in the opening. One of the news items was the announcement that the UFC 230 tickets will go on sale during this upcoming 229 press conference. There's some people that are talking about maybe there's a potential for them to rebook Woodley and Covington on that card there. They're heading back to Madison Square Garden, so they need something big. Is that the fight you would do next? Or do you go some other route with Woodley, giving maybe even looking at that fight with GSP?
Yeah, I know some people who know him, and they haven't really given me a clear idea. But the thing about it is, everybody tells me is everybody who knows Tyron tells me one thing: Tyron is very forward thinking. He pays a lot of attention to detail, and he knows how to he understands the process of doing business. A lot of guys understand the benefit of doing business. They don't understand the process. And there's a difference. It's like, somebody's a worker and they get a raise, they get that. They don't understand the process, which is what the managers, the regional managers, the CEOs, that's what they understand. That's what they focus on. Woodley understands he's not in a necessary position to just demand anybody or get the biggest names. So he's available for the biggest names. And what he's gonna have to do is find who can help raise his Q rating a little bit more. Nobody else in the welterweight division has any sort of burn or any sort of attention or struck any sort of chord with the casual mixed martial arts fan except for Colby Covington. Whether he really deserves it or not, whether he's really beating a lot of top guys or not, the fact of the matter is the only fight that would make sense out of a GSP fight or maybe a Nick Diaz fight if Nick Diaz came back for some reason. The only one that would make him money, the only one that would actually justify a high profile push and a countdown and all these other shows that create the interest would be Colby Covington. He's the guy who's laid the groundwork and set up a grudge match and won the interim title. He's completed all the steps to make the fight financially viable and legitimately viable because he's done what's been required of him to put himself in a position to be the challenger.
So you would go with that Kobe Covington fight. That's actually the decision I would make too. I think that with
I mean, who
UFC
else
two,
is there?
I mean, you're right. There really isn't anyone else there. With UFC 230, I mean, there's only 5 or 6 fights that's been announced for that card. It's November 3rd in Madison Square Garden. Uh, they need 2 big fights on 2, maybe even 3. I mean, in the first time they went there, they had 3 title fights. This one, I think they could pull off a Woodley Covington main event and have Valentina Shevchenko fight for the flyweight title. I doubt they get Joanna to take that fight on a short notice.
I hope
Maybe,
not. Throw all their legitimacy out the window. That doesn't even make any sense.
I
That's
mean
even worse.
that
That's worse than Valentina fighting for the title. That's how bad that is.
legitimacy has already gone out the window when it comes to that women's flyweight division. I've been talking about this for the last few weeks, especially since Montano has been stripped of the title. We're going to come back to that, but maybe they get her and Sajarj Eubanks to fight. Um, there, I don't think Eubanks has a fight booked. I'll be interested to see what her weight is
Oh
like
no,
at this.
Eubanks has one. Eubanks has one booked. She's supposed to be fighting Jessica I in theory, unless they switch it up.
I mean, maybe they could switch it up, or they could even throw Jessica I there. So it'd be intriguing to see what they do with that group. They already have a opponent for Shevchenko already in mind. I wouldn't be surprised if it is Shevchenko, if it is Jessica I or Eubanks. I wouldn't definitely wouldn't be even more surprised if they picked I over Eubanks. But that's neither here
Hey,
nor there. But those two fights,
Raphael, real quick, Raphael. I
yeah.
just want to make one point. The thing about Covington, and this is what people don't understand, because everybody gets hung up on the initial name and all that kind of stuff and the rankings. I'm aware of legitimacy, but I'm a WWE fan. I understand business as well. You understand the business of the combat sports of selling that sporting aspect of it. You can't just sell the legitimacy. You have to sell the entertainment. You have to sell the angles. That's how the NFL pushes fights. Oh, we got Cam, Superman. We got Dak leading the Cowboy. There has to be an angle. The thing with Colby Covington isn't that he's such a big name. It's not that he's made such an impact. He's made some, but he hasn't made such an impact. The thing about him is it's the same reason Floyd went with Conor McGregor. Yeah, the fight with Conor was big just because of who Conor is. But you know what made the fight even bigger? The fact that Conor was going to be able to play through as far as the press conferences, the pre-press conferences, every single written interview, every single time microphone is put in his face, he was stating his case. He was being loud and bold and brash. He was attacking everybody on every single level. He didn't care about what was appropriate. He cared about making his point and selling the fight. Colby Covington might not resonate with people right off the bat, but when you put him on the big stage, all the stuff he said before is going to come back up, and he's clearly sold on being a heel. He's not going to pull any punches. He's going to build on top of that. He's going to build momentum. There won't just be momentum from him being announced. There'll be momentum from him being announced and having 2 to 3 months to build that up with whatever ridiculous nonsense he's going to say and whatever story he brings up about John Jones or Tyron Woodley, and everybody will be talking about Covington. That's why Woodley wants Covington, because Covington will not just build the fight initially. He will build the fight as the fight keeps going. He will keep giving him fuel to help sell that pay-per-view. He'll maximize whatever appeal Tyron has, and he'll maximize whatever appeal he has. Other guys can't do that. It's just he's fighting Usman. Usman ain't gonna say nothing. He's fighting Ponzinibbio. Ponzinibbio ain't got nothing to say. Covington has something to say. He knows how to strike a nerve, and that's a talent that a lot of fighters don't have, and that's why they're not getting the opportunities they're supposed to be getting.
I mean, I totally agree with you on that, man. I totally agree with you there. Let's talk about Darren Till now, though. He was a hot prospect. Loses a big fight and loses it in a pretty, I don't want to use the term embarrassing, uses it in a pretty
No, that's right.
standout way.
Embarrassing.
He only, landed 2 strikes, maybe threw 2 strikes, something along those lines. But,
The best thing you can say about him is he defended some takedowns.
and he took a bunch of shots.
Yeah, the biggest problem with him, Till still has some charisma. He's a good-looking dude. He's kind of intimidating. He has a style that kind of lends itself to a little bit more of excitement. He kind of can sell a little bit. He knows how he speaks the language the fans want to hear. The thing about Till is I predicted Till to win because I thought Till seemed like a very physically tough, mentally tough, and intelligent fighter. I said I've always said this: when Rory McDonald beat Woodley, Rory McDonald laid out a blueprint. And in mixed martial arts, usually it's a copycat league. Remember when Lyoto did the front kick? What did everybody start doing? Front kicks. When when Silva started counterpunching, everybody started trying counterpunching. When Ronda started doing head and arm tosses, everybody started trying to do them. They usually copycat, see if they can get similar results. Rory McDonald laid out a blueprint to beat Tyron Woodley, and not one person has even attempted to use the blueprint. And we have no idea to believe that Tyron Woodley could stop the blueprint if you use it against him. But nobody tries it. I figured Till would use his length, front kicks, jab, the fact that he can take a punch. He's not a he has a good chin. He took a lot of shots from Woodley. He wasn't out, and he could use that chin and his durability to kind of be the line of defense against Woodley's power. So Woodley couldn't scare him off. Woodley would hit him some big shots, but he would keep volume on Woodley. He would force Woodley back. He would overload Woodley's senses. He didn't do any of that. He came in doing the same thing he always does, hands down, trying to gauge a distance, looking for an opening. You can't do that with a guy with Woodley's timing, Woodley's experience, and Woodley's explosiveness. He gave Tyron Woodley the fight he wanted. He walked into the same shot Woodley was working on in Countdown with Eric Brown, former coach of Magliani, and Peter Kid Chocolate, Peter Quillen. They were working on that counter right hand. He said when he comes in and you gauge the distance, you walk him right into the shot. You come in low and walk him into the shot. The same shot that counter right hand he was working on, he landed and he landed easily and still was walking into the shot, which either maximized the power, would maximize the effect, would put Till on his butt, and started the avalanche of things going wrong. I was very disappointed in Till's inability to show any new wrinkles. Basically, Tyron, if he saw his first fight, he's seen all of Till's fights, and Till had nothing for him. Tyron made an adjustment and then went back to what he's doing. Till did the same thing he always does, and he got wiped out. So that shows a little bit. That shows a lack of awareness. It makes me question his camp, and it makes me question Till's unwillingness or inability to do anything different. So he's been kind of exposed right now, and he's in a division full of heavy hitters who've got good wrestling and grappling backgrounds. There's a lot of guys who can repeat what Tyron just did to him, at least on the ground, even on the strike. Anybody could counter him. So I have some concerns for Till. He still can sell. He's still got a name. He's still got a little bit of a buzz behind him, and the fans were into him. But the fact of the matter is, he got wiped out, and Tyron hadn't finished anybody in years, and he finished him and did so handily. I don't know if he broke a sweat.
I mean, yeah, he definitely did it handily there. Before the fight, Till was talking about moving up to middleweight. If you're in his camp still, do you continue that narrative? Do you try to talk him into moving up to 185?
It could be possible. It might be like the James Vick thing. You know, James Vick is fighting at lightweight, but he's a huge lightweight, and he's cutting a lot of weight. And everybody knows. I mean, it's part of getting concussions. When you're dehydrated, it's easier to get concussions because there's less fluid around your brain. If Till's making such a huge cut, sometimes the fight to him might just be making the weight. You know, like, oh, I made the weight, I'm fine. Maybe he's unable to do certain things, or maybe he's unwilling to take certain approaches because he doesn't know if his body can hold up. Maybe that's why he fights with such low volume, because he figures I'm gonna have to use my size and durability to make up for the fact that I can't throw any volume. I can't really put combinations together. I can't really work a consistent jab. It might be something worth exploring because he's still a good striker. He's still young, and if it didn't work out, he's still young enough where he could drop back down and try welterweight again. You know, give it a test run and see how it is. Maybe it would make his durability more. Maybe his activity would go up. At this point, he's already gotten to the peak at the welterweight. He's already got a title shot, so now he'd have to work his way back up. So if this isn't his best weight, he might want to look at some other options right now while he can. You don't want to wait 2 or 3 losses later and then move up. You know, right now you just lost to one of the better fighters, pound for pound guys right now. You don't be losing to the 5th ranked, 7th ranked, 10th ranked, 14th ranked welterweight. It's very possible that he could lose to all those guys moving forward.
Yeah, it is very possible that he could lose
And
to.
middleweight is very thin. Middleweight is very thin. I mean, I know it's looking a little better right now, but if you really think about it, middleweight doesn't have a whole lot of guys who are just so dominant and can really expose him right now. It might be something he needs to look into, but he's really got to look at his game a little bit more because that size and strength difference, he won't have that advantage anymore. And based on his defensive wrestling and his defensive grappling and his lack of defense on the feet, there's a likelihood that a lesser striker and a lesser experienced guy could imitate what Tyron Woodley did. Yo Romero could, Paulo Costa, maybe Ryan Hall might get him. You know what I'm saying? Like there's a path to beat him now.
Very true there. Very, very interesting breakdowns there. Let's move on because I don't want to focus just on the main event because so much happened at UFC 228. Let's talk about that co-main event where Jessica Andrade starched Carolina Kowalski so much in a way that I've almost felt bad. And we're going to talk about Carolina in a second. But man, Andrade, it's just funny because heading into this fight, Tatiana Suarez looked like she may have found a way to push her name into the title picture. She would have been the big name to watch at strawweight coming out of UFC 228. But Andrade needed a few minutes to go in there and lay Carolina out cold. What do you make about this co-main event there, Schwan?
Well, I wasn't shocked at all. I picked Andrade. I think a lot of people did. The problem, it was kind of Andrade and Suarez. Their fights actually mirrored one another. You had two fighters who had fighting somebody who basically had the same skill set and basically leaned on the same things to win. Carolina Kovacevic, she's not a great striker. She's not a great wrestler. She's not a great grappler. What she is a decent fighter with decent skills who gets by on her physicality, her durability, and her ability to force the pace. Jessica Andrade is a fighter with average skills who gets by on her physicality, her durability, her ability to push the pace. The difference is Andrade is a very good athlete, if not great, and big for the weight class. Kovacevic is not. Kovacevic does not hit like Andrade. So basically, you just have Andrade charging forward, Kovacevic charging him forward, them exchanging. Kovacevic isn't good defensively because she gets by on her chin. You walk into a clinch, she chops you up. She exchanges with you, she pushes you back, she scares you off with her volume. When have you ever seen Jessica Andrade been scared off by anything? It doesn't happen. So Kovacevic is tall in the pocket. She's getting hit with the same right hand like 10 or 11 times, which shows you how good her chin is. But eventually, your chin can't hold up, and she gets put away. So it was, it was, it was, it was impressive because Andrade hadn't really iced anybody in a while. And then when she finally knocked somebody out, she knocked out one of the more durable fighters in the division. Claudia Gadelha did not Kovacevic out like this. Rose Namajunas couldn't do anything close to this. Felice Herrick couldn't do anything close to this, and Andrade just wiped her off the mat. It
Well, I
even
mean,
made it look.
none of those. Who at strawweight throws hams like that?
Yeah, yeah. Andrade just sells out. She puts all her body because she's not afraid of getting hit back. Like if you're fighting somebody and you know they can't hurt you, how much do you tee off on them because you're not afraid. She's never has to be afraid because nobody can really hurt her, so she can just tear into people. Now the people she's fought have had a little bit of quickness or some defensive acumen. Kovacevic has none of that. Every right hand she hit her with was full on, head on. She couldn't avoid it if she tried to. It's like she was blindfolded. She just couldn't see the right hand coming.
He said,
So
he looked like she was blindfolded. Goodness gracious.
I mean, and the worst part about this is Kovacevic hasn't really gotten any better since she first came in there. She's fighting the same way she always fights, and she's fighting somebody who she knew basically once Andrade was afraid to be backed off. Kovacevic had no answer except to just throw more volume. She didn't get low in the pocket. She didn't try for a reactive takedown. She didn't throw a bunch of front kicks and jabs. She didn't try to maintain the distance. She just kept pushing forward into against a bigger hitter, a better athlete, and a more durable fighter. That's a terrible game plan. What I don't know. So it was impressive because of the fact of the finish. It's kind of like the Woodley thing. The finish was more impressive than the opponent or the matchup. But the matchup, all things favored Andrade. The only difference is Kovacevic can move around a little bit. But the fact is, when she attacks or defends really under pressure, it's in straight line. So that plays the Andrade strength. So basically, she just got beat by a more athletic version of herself in a certain sense.
What I find so interesting about this is I've always wondered why everyone has Carolina ranked so highly. I feel like we talked about this leading into the event, but for Andrade, man, she's dangerous at this weight class. I think she should be the number one contender for that title. No hands down. Her and Rose should be booked to fight that should be Rose's next defense. No questions asked there. Do you see her becoming champion? This is a woman who fought at 135, cut down the straw weight. Excuse me, cut down the straw weight at 115, and is now fighting at 125. Never has she missed weight. Do you think Andrade is a champion in the UFC today?
I think I could see have avenues to beat Rose. She's physical. Rose won't be able to scare her off. If she gets her hands on Rose, she is going to throw her around left and right. She's just so much stronger. And clearly, if she hits Rose a couple times, we've seen that she can do huge damage. I mean, she beat the hell out of Angela Hill. She beat Angela Hill, and Angela Hill hasn't been the same since. She's knocked
You
around
gonna stop
JoJo's
talking
heart
about my
before.
girl?
Yeah, she's a great fighter, but after about 4 minutes, Angela Hill first she came in throwing heat. All of a sudden, then she started looking to survive. There's nothing wrong with that, but she wasn't trying to throw as hard as she could. She was trying to like throwing hard to get her away from you, not throwing away trying to knock her out anymore. But the thing about Rose it helps is Rose is long. Rose has a lot of length with her kicks, the head kicks, the body kicks, the spinning kicks, the side kicks, the front kicks, and Rose has defensive footwork. I don't know if Rose has the conditioning or she has the poise to completely duplicate what Joanna Jędrzejczyk did, but she could. She's just as mobile. She's long. She's a better boxer. She's got quicker hands, a little bit harder hitting hands. So there's a possibility that she could outbox Andrade for 5 rounds. I mean, she'd get caught here and there. The question is, could she take it? Would she crack underneath the pressure? But in theory, she could kind of follow the game plan that Jessica Andrade did. I'm going to use my jab. I'm going to use my angles. I'm going to circle them, use my long range weapons, and just outpoint her for 5 rounds. That's possible. The thing is, we know Andrade can seems to be able to take a little bit better shot, and Andrade can work herself out of bad spots. And we've seen Rose a couple times kind of fold up when somebody really got physical with her. Esparza, it wasn't really a technical hole. Esparza just kind of bullied her and overwhelmed her. And against Kovacevic got her hands on her and overwhelmed her. So we haven't seen, and even when she fought Joanna, when Joanna got the clinch, Joanna was putting some heat on her. It, and Joanna's not a big hitter. Neither is Kovacevic. Neither is Esparza. Andrade will change your life with her physicality, and that's where the thing would be. Rose could fight a perfect fight, and then boom, the boom gets lowered, and that's it for her. I still would favor Rose just because I believe there's transitional submission attempts, and I don't think very highly of Andrade's skill, but I think highly of him as far as Andrade's her athletic ability and the fact that she has an identity as a fighter and she does not stray from it. She knows what she's good at. She finds different ways to get to her strengths, and she never gets away from her strengths, which is what ruins a lot of fighters. They have a clear skill set advantage, and they fight away from it to prove a point or be exciting. And Andrade has never gotten away from what works for her. She's a very smart fighter in that instance. But given the gap in skills and the fact that Rose can box a little bit and can move a little bit, I don't see a wipeout that everybody else keeps telling me it's going to be. Andrade's footwork is still terrible. Her striking is still not clean. She still lunges. She's still there to be hit. Her pivots and angles are just terrible, and she applies a lot of pressure. So she's walking into shots full power. So if you've got some discipline and some poise, and you can really ramp up your defense and keep busy with those long range weapons, I still think you could outpoint her. But you have to be able to stay off the back foot. You have to be able to stay off the cage, and you have to be able to not give her a moment's rest and really overload her with volume and different strikes, a variety of strikes.
Some good analysis there. So some great analysis. Let's look at what some other stuff that occurred on Saturday because we have quite a few other fights to talk about. Zabit Zabit Magomed Sharapov. I can't even. Let's call him Zabit. I used to be able to pronounce his last name. Today it's just not working. Zabit picked up a big win over Brandon Davis, submitting him with the Sulov stretch, which is his wasn't so much the knee bar from the backpack position. It was more. I'm going to call it more side pressure, more heel hook than knee bar. If you look at the way that they fell, but
No, no,
he
but
got the
Joe
submission.
Rogan said it was the exact same move.
It wasn't. If you look, because if you look at their position, if you just look at the position between the two. I think it was Kenny Robertson who did it first in the UFC. Him and Aljamain Sterling, their positions were more the same than Zabit's was. It looked like it. I mean, even from the view I was watching, it looked like it was close. But either way, I want to talk
Sam,
about.
that's why we have Raphael there. Everybody else is co-signing Joe Rogan. Raphael saw it differently, and he had the courage to say it. Everybody else like, no, it's the same move. Nope, you saw it differently. You called it differently.
Yeah, it was
That's
a little
what
different. It was
that's
definitely
what had to be
a
understood.
little different there. But something I want to talk about with is Zabit. This was his third, I think, third or fourth win in the UFC. The UFC rankings are coming out, I think, tomorrow or this week. Two people did not have him ranked at flyweight, and there's an argument that was going on
Is it
on
flyweight or
Twitter
featherweight?
or featherweight, excuse me. Two people did not have him ranked at featherweight, and there's an argument going on Twitter right now. Is because the combined record of his opponents are 3-6. So,
I
Schwan,
I, I agree
do
with
you
them.
rank him in the top 15 at 145 pounds?
I can rank him in the top 15 based off his skill set, his physical tools, and what he's shown as far as poise and professionalism and in cage intelligence. But I can't really rank him off of accomplishment because he hasn't faced anybody who's put him in a spot where he's had to make an adjustment. He's choosing to make adjustments in these fights because nobody can threaten him athletically, technically, or as far as strategy. So I haven't seen him against somebody who could push back. I haven't seen somebody who could put him in a bad spot. So it's hard to give him a high ranking when he's facing guys who he's almost got every single advantage over. I mean, none of his fights have even been a 50-50 fight. It's been, you know, 70-80, we think 70-30, we think he's going to win. How am I giving you rankings off of guys who don't really pose any threat to you? Basically I'm just ranking off of potential. I have to see him fight somebody who can put him in positions he doesn't want to, who can handle what he has to do and have answers, someone who can force him to get past his talent in his game, his plan A. Force him to go to a plan B, not let him choose to. There's a difference between a guy when you choose to grapple some guy and you have to because that guy is whooping your ass on the feet. There's a difference. He hasn't been put in that spot, so based on potential, sure, he's probably top 15. He might even be close to top 10. But based on what he's done, I can't even say top 15. I mean, it was a big win because he picked up another impressive win. It wasn't a big win because he beat anybody who anybody knew or really respected as just some kind of up and coming future star.
Yeah, definitely. It's so. What do you think about the fight with Yair Rodriguez that fell out? Who do
I
you look at in that fight?
I think he beats Rodriguez because I haven't seen Rodriguez in so long. So I don't know what Rodriguez has to offer. Last thing I saw from Rodriguez, unless he's made huge leaps and bounds, he's not the greatest defensive wrestler. He's not the greatest offensive wrestler. He's more of a big spot offense kind of guy. He dynamic kicks and his spinning kicks and dynamic attacks, but he doesn't have any consistency and his defense isn't there at all. So I don't really see how he beat Zabib unless it was a high kick out of the blue or a spinning kick out of the blue or some kind of, dynamic takedown or dynamic submission attempt. His game isn't very cohesive. It doesn't have a lot of structure in regards to the stand up or the balance of offense and defense and counters or the balance between striking, grappling, and wrestling. It's kind of like a Winklejohn kind of fighter. Just all these different things he can do, but he can't put any of them together, and there's no consistency in how he puts it together. So he'd be facing a comparable athlete with a better skill set, better cage IQ, and somebody who knows how to transition between ranges. I didn't think that was a good fight for Yair. I was like, I know a lot of managers who thought that was a bad fight for Yair. I was thinking Yair should have went to Bellator and saved himself a headache, but I didn't think it was a good fight for him unless he's turned into a different fighter, a completely different fighter than he was before. If he's the same guy, then no, this guy might kill him. They might put this guy in jail for what he's going to do to him.
Interesting, man. I'm interested in that fight there just because I think that's the real test. If we want to really kind of say Zabit deserves to be ranked, and this is why, I think that that's the real test. Um,
But who's Yair beat? I mean, he had a spectacular win against BJ Penn and against Andre Feely, two now world leaders. And then, I mean, no offense, I guess you could say he beat Alex Caceres, but in spots, Alex Caceres was giving him the business, dude. He was really, I mean, Alex Caceres took him 5 rounds. And then we saw what Frank Edgar did to him. A guy with a multi-layer game plan just took him apart. Just bullied him, beat him up. I mean, he had no answers off his back. He couldn't defend a takedown. He couldn't get up. He can do anything except take that ass whoop. That's based on the fights he's won and lost. I don't see how he beats Beat. Beat seems like a better prepared fighter. Now maybe it's Beat's total fraud based on what they've actually shown. I mean, if you beat him, that's great. That would impress me. You'd be like, you're the reason you're ranked is you beat up BJ Penn. That's why you're ranked. I mean, that's not much. I mean, Jose Aldo beating Jeremy Stevens has some weight to it. somebody beating a Chad Mendes or a Miles Jury. Beating BJ Penn at this stage, nothing to brag about it. It make you a world class fighter at all. Beating Alex Harris.
You're breaking up a little bit, man. I need you to get to a better spot. You're breaking up a little bit.
You hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah. Beating Alex Harris doesn't impress me. That doesn't mean you're world class. Beating a faded BJ Penn does not mean you're world class either. So Zabit beating Yair is what I expected. And if Yair beats Zabit, then I'd be like, okay, Zabit isn't who I thought he was either. It it doesn't do much for me either way. It'd be a great fight, interesting fight. But if Yair loses, I expect it. If Zabit loses, then he really isn't who we thought he was. That just exposes him and his limitations. It doesn't prove anything about Yair to me.
True, true there. Let's keep moving on because we got a couple of other fights to look at. Tatiana Suarez, she absolutely did the damn thing against Carla Esparza. Basically, put her whole foot in Esparza's ass for 3 rounds. Is she the woman to dominate the strawweight division?
If she gets more seasoning, the simple fact of the matter is Suarez, she's got the same problem a lot of dynamic wrestlers have or whatever. It's almost the same problem Ronda Rousey has. This fight was basically Ronda Rousey versus Miesha Tate. If you really look at it was different stylistically, but if you look at the advantages and the skill sets and kind of how the fight went, it was essentially Miesha Tate versus Ronda Rousey. But Suarez has the same problem a lot of people have. There's no connectivity between her game. She can't transition from striking into wrestling attempts, into grappling. Her transition between wrestling and grappling, great. Her transitions between striking and wrestling, not good at all. Her footwork isn't great in getting her in the position she wants to. When she shoots, she lunges because she has no idea how to work her way in behind a jab or a front kick. Defensively, she's there to be caught. Defensively, she is there to be caught. Luckily, she was facing a fighter who didn't have the athletic skills, the technical skills, or the strategical awareness to do anything except give her the fight she wants by backing straight into the fence. Suarez has such a huge advantage physically. He has such a huge advantage as a wrestler. She's going to be able to cover those mistakes against fighters who can't make her pay. But against fighters who have some pop in their hands, fighters who aren't afraid to go to the ground, fighters with a little bit more seasoning on the feet, she'll give you spots where you can get her. The first takedown she got on Esparza, she reached for it. She reached and had her head down. Esparza could have caught her with a counter uppercut, could have check hooked her, spun off the cage. Carla Esparza isn't that kind of fighter. That's why she could do that. And she doesn't have the athleticism, and she doesn't have the power. Claudia Gadelha could have got her in a couple spots. Now, most likely she wears out Claudia Gadelha if it gets that far, but we still don't know how Suarez takes a shot. We don't know how she recovers from a shot. We don't know how it is when she's the nail instead of the hammer. We've never seen it. So there's some questions. What advantage she has is she's very long, she's young, she is a legitimately world-class wrestler, and she's got such huge physical advantages that she can force the fight in the places she wants to, and once she gets it there, most girls don't have the athleticism or the defensive skills to counter her at all. But I think there's some holes that can be exploited. The question is, if you commit to exploiting them, can you handle the cover price for making that attempt? You throw that counter hook, if she gets under you and gets her hands on you, you know you're going flying. You throw that kick, and you don't take her legs out from underneath her on it, she's going to grab your leg, run the pipe, get you down, and then it's problems. But it was a very impressive showing. She did what they wanted Cynthia Calvillo to do. She fought the former world champion. She won in dominating fashion, and she stamped her ticket as an elite fighter. And now they can get behind her to try and get that Hispanic fan base again. That's the goal behind this. This was a showcase fight made to make her into a bigger star by beating the former champion. This is an old boxing technique they use. And unlike Calvillo, she didn't crack underneath the pressure. She finished the job.
Yeah, man, she definitely looked good from start to finish there.
Wait, I have a question. As a grappler, were you a grappler and a former wrestler yourself? Were you impressed by the fact that Esparza was able to have moments like she reversed or was able to kind of get those hip bumps and get a little bit of space? I mean, she wasn't quick enough to really do anything with it, but she was able to create the space against a girl who was worlds, light years better than her on the ground.
Say the question again. Was I impressed?
Yeah, like how she got the little hip bump, was almost able to reverse her again. One time she actually did. She defended some takedowns. She had a couple moments. Did that impress you as far? Was she better than you thought defensively?
Are you talking about Carla?
Yes.
This is what I'll say about Carla, and I'll say this. I felt bad because she's been on the tail end of two of the worst beatings we've seen in the UFC in the last few years, and they're two totally different beatings. She took the one on her feet by Joanna when she lost the strawweight title, and then she took this one by being taken down and not being able to get up and getting pounded out for 3 rounds, getting stopped in the third. She's legit taken two of the worst beatings we've seen in the UFC in quite a while.
Yeah. I do have to say, we have friend of the show, Ryan Wagner, was talking about, he's an analyst that one day I like to have on. He did highlight the fact that as hyped up as people are about what she did at Esparza has, one, never been a great defensive grappler, and two, has never been a great offensive grappler. He was mentioning that Joanna, even though she's a striker, is actually a better defensive wrestler than Carla, partly because of her footwork, partly because of her work in the clinch and how she defends. And Claudia Gadelha also was a better defensive grappler and actually would pose more of a threat as an offensive wrestler as well. So he made an argument that those two could cause Suarez some problems, because if Suarez could get her takedown stuff by Esparza or could be out positioned to reverse, it'd be ridiculous to think that maybe someone like a Dern or a Gadelha or a Jen Jadrick couldn't have similar spots of success and maybe build on it a little bit.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what goes on in the future there. But let's kind of continue the narrative there, because I think that her and Andrade, they're going to fight at some point in time. They will fight at some point in time, and that's a fight that I'm kind of interested in. Of course, I'm interested in Rose fighting either one of them, but I think that fight kind of interests me right this moment because we just got to
Speaking of
see
Rose,
them both.
is she going to be able to fight again? Because last time I heard, she doesn't want to be around lots of people, press conferences, fights, big crowds.
I mean, Rose has always been a mental health advocate because we know that she's had her issues, but she is a strong woman who continuously overcomes, and she'll be back in there. She'll be
I
back in
just,
there.
I mean, especially as you know about the case Kaseya placed against McGregor. I mean, if this is, and I'm not saying anybody's lying, I'm not saying that at all, but if it's really that kind of level of damage, do you go to defend the title when you know you're not 100% right and you're going to be in an environment that's going to make you uncomfortable? Because you can't perform when you're not comfortable. If you're mentally kind of shook, how do you perform against a dangerous opponent? How do you do that?
Yeah, you're right. How do you do that? What else stood out for you from this event? We had a couple. We had multiple good fights that went down on Saturday. What else kind of caught your eye?
Of course, the Sterling fight caught my eye. Just because Aljamain, he's very smart. He gets it. He understands how to sell himself. He's playing an angle, and he's putting himself in a position where where he's asking for big fights, and he's trying to break through and get to the next level of his stage. He realized the UFC's been kind of using him to test guys out and to see where guys are at, and now he's trying to get the bigger fights that are going to establish him as a superstar. So I liked how he handled his win. I liked how he handled the build up to it. I like the angle he's going in. I still have some concerns about his boxing and his actual consistency in his wrestling, but I was really impressed by Aljamain Sterling before, in the cage, and outside of the cage after he won.
Yeah, I'm very impressed with what we saw from Sterling as well too. That was a big uh, that was a big fight there, and he needed that win, and I'm glad that he got that win there. And
Yeah, it
did
was a
anything else?
catastrophic. Uh,
So
no,
go
not
ahead.
really. Those are the biggest points.
So okay, so let's keep moving on because we have UFC Fight Night 136. There isn't a lot to talk about here. Mark Hunt, Alexia Olenek in the main event. As always, let's kind of focus on that because it is the main event of the fight. What do you see there with this heavyweight contest?
It's just a matter of whether Olenek can get the fight to where he wants it without taking any damage. Olenek's not very durable. He's not very physical. He's not a dynamic wrestler type. He's a very slick and tricky grappler, but he has to get there. He has to get you there, and he has to get you in there in the right circumstances. Hunt's kind of hard to take down at this stage. He hits very hard on the counter, and he's still a guy who seems to have his durability and his willingness to take punishment. I'd probably have to favor Hunt. It's not a really important fight to me just because Olenek's kind of been exposed for what he is, and Mark Hunt clearly is not the fighter he used to be. He's still dangerous, but he's no longer considered. He's never really considered elite technically, and he's no closer to that, and his chin starting to fail him, and his conditioning starting to fail him. So whoever wins this, it isn't really the only reason they still be considered elite is once again they're in the heavyweight division. It's not a really fancy fight. It's not a really sexy fight. It's a fight for the purpose of having a fight, and that's the best thing you say to sell the fight, and the best thing you say about the fight.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not too excited. I probably missed this. Well, I will be missing this fight because I'm going to watch Canelo Triple G 2, which I think is going to be an excellent boxing match. I'm looking forward to that instead. Actually, you know what? F UFC Fight Night 136. Talk to me about that right there, Schwan. Canelo Triple G 2. What do you see going down?
The biggest thing about this is gonna be about adjustments. Canelo in the first fight, he was outboxing Triple G. The thing is, he didn't throw enough volume. He focused a lot on getting away, controlling the range, flipping punches, and not necessarily always firing the counter because historically Canelo has tended to slow in fights. Against someone who applies the pressure Triple G does and has the power Triple G does and the physicality, he didn't want to risk gassing. So for huge spots to fight, he was just pot shotting and flipping and getting away. He's going to have to throw a little bit more volume. He's going to have to sit down on the shots a little bit more if he really wants to separate himself versus Golovkin. Because I thought Golovkin won the first fight. The issue with Golovkin is recently in his biggest fights recently, he hasn't been the all round boxer or the destroyer he used to be. He's gotten away from attacking the body. He's gotten a little bit flat footed. He's overcommitted on some of his offense, and he's walking some huge shots. He's been outworked in some spots. So what he's gonna have to do is he's gonna have to get back. He's gonna have to stay on his jab, but he's gonna have to really start mixing up his combinations. It can't be so predictable. It can't be so obvious because he's fighting one of the better defensive fighters in boxing today, and he's gonna have to get to the body. He's gonna have to make an adjustment. What he's always done isn't gonna get it this time. The biggest question for me on him is, did Canelo get him at the right time? Have they stretched this fight out enough to where there's enough slippage in Golovkin that Canelo can get him? And that's for Canelo's favor. As far as Golovkin, can he make the adjustments? Is he willing to pay the price to be the all-round, technical, disciplined, balanced fighter that he needs to beat Canelo? It's not good enough just to walk him down and take shots. That's not going to be good enough. He's going to have to make the adjustment. And it's a big spot for Abel Sanchez because Abel Sanchez recently, a lot of his fighters have been getting exposed to a lack of versatility, a lack of all-round games, a lack of consistent ability to cut the ring off and keep the fight where they want it. Golovkin got a little bit exposed in the last fight. So can Abel Sanchez make for a better fight if Canelo doesn't give him the fight he wants? So there's a lot of questions in this. I still favor Golovkin because I thought Golovkin won the first fight, and I don't really believe that you can fix cardio problems overnight. I think Canelo should start out hot, and then he's going to start trying to pick his spots. He's going to try and get a lead and sit on it. The question is, can Golovkin throw enough volume, and can he throw enough volume to the right spots with a variety in his shot to put the fight together and then pull it out late or get a stoppage late? He wasn't able to do it before. He just kept pressuring, walking in the shot. He's going to have to show a little bit more variation this go around.
Man, that was, dude, you just went all in. I should have created a whole section just for you to kind of break down that fight there by itself. I'm really looking forward to
Shout out to Canelo's trainers. They don't get a lot of credit, but if you've seen they developed Canelo essentially from scratch. They turned him into one of the finest counter punchers and one of the slickest defensive boxers in fighting. I mean, even when he got caught with Golovkin, he was rolling, getting the shoulder, pivoting his positioning. It's just amazing. They've done an outstanding job with him. I've seen much better athletic talent be worse technical fighters, and the Reynosos, they've done a magnificent job with him. Just incredible. They've done more with him than I feel that Abel Sanchez has done with Golovkin as far as overall skills, the awareness, and the ring IQ, not cage IQ. Sorry to cut you off. Just want to put that out there.
No. You're all good, man. You're all good, bro. I appreciate your insight there. So with that in mind, man, let's go ahead and bring this show to a close. We've had a pretty good hour-long show, pretty good conversation here. What are you working on this week?
I think I'm be working on some kind of like since I wasn't covering this event, I think I'm gonna try and hit on some articles that kind of explore some other avenues of fighters. I'm thinking about doing an article on Tyron Woodley, basically just stating the case that his success is just him being smarter and better prepared. And I'm looking into doing something for Tatiana Suarez, kind of giving a more objective look at her and what she has in front of her. I know the hype is really big on her right now, and I was impressed too. I've been always been impressed with her, but with the hype and the support, you have to have some realism as far as what to expect moving forward. Because everybody gets on the hype train, and if I'm another person just cheerleading, why read my stuff? You can go to any website and hear how great she is and how dominant she is. Somebody needs to tell you where the spots are she can be taken advantage of and where she needs to improve and why she needs to improve. That's how you that's how you round out things. Oh yeah, and one more thing we forgot to talk about, but I just like to say it. That fight between Pudilova and Irene Aldana, great fight. Great fight, high contact, high volume, high activity, lots of variety in what they're doing. That was an exciting fight. Great fight for Aldana. She probably needs to add something to her training camp because she's hitting the wall as far as how far her skills can take her. She's going to have to make some adjustments if she wants to take a step forward as far as the caliber of opponent she can be. She's kind of gotten as far as she can get with what she's doing right now.
Cool, cool, cool. Yeah, very, very true. So, yeah, man, I'm gonna go ahead and close it out. I'm covering the Nogi Pans this weekend. A couple of other events going on in the grappling space, football as well, professional wrestling. So just be sure to stick to my Twitter feed at R Garcia Sports to catch all of my content. Schwan, let them know where they can find you on Twitter.
You can find me at Black Jordan Breen on Twitter. You want to discuss WMMA or any MMA or boxing, occasionally basketball. I break that down too. Just hit me up. We can have that discussion. Like I said, anytime you approach me with it, I will sit there and talk to you as long as you want, from any angle you want, about whatever fighter you want, and give you a perspective of somebody who's actually works with people in these camps and has some insight as far as what goes on behind the scenes. So once again, just look for me at Black Jordan Bean on Twitter.
And where can you find our podcast?
You got us on YouTube, SoundCloud, iTunes, and FM radio, if I recall correctly. FM radio on the internet. So those are probably the four major places you can find us on. And once again, thank you for supporting the show. All you guys, our numbers have been slowly creeping up, and we appreciate y'all showing us that support and that attention.
Fantastic, man. And with that in mind, let's go ahead and close out. And everyone, have a great day. We will be back next week with episode 98 of the MMA Ratings Podcast. But until then, guys, have a great night.
All right. Good night, guys.